I think it's a perfect segue into our next topic, which is the process for preparing board metrics. Lauren, could we start with you on that? What have you seen over the years? How do we build trust into these metrics that we're preparing through a sound process? I'm curious about what you have to say.
Yeah, no, I think Kaitlin has a much better perspective on how the actual data is pulled together. But from a high level, one of the best practices that I've seen is a great CFO in the Bay Area, Eric Mersch, who is now working as a contract CFO. And he says every time he goes into a new company, the first thing he does is at the first board meeting, sit down and say, here's the metrics that I think we're going to be presenting on a regular basis. And here's how we calculate it. And we're not going to talk about that again until we have to say that we're going to calculate it slightly differently, and we'll give you the reason why. But it sort of cuts out that issue of, going forward because all of these operational metrics, there's so many different definitions out there, and there's so much confusion about it, and there's a lot of politics around it and bias and all sorts of things. So he just cuts through that and has very efficient ways of handling the board from that. And then the second is another best practice from a great CFO, which is to always add benchmarks up front to provide context. So instead of letting people get off on conversations like, well, why isn't the growth rate here? Or why isn't, this, that? I'm working at this other company and they're doing this. And it's just provide the benchmarks. So you always have sort of guide rails to the conversation, and it sets the expectations up front. And then it's just a matter, we work a lot. And I think, David, we've done some webinars in the past about the systems required to get from 20 to 200 million on, part of it's just making sure that there's a flow through from, the customer number in the sales system has to match the customer number in the financial system and in the recurring revenue, system. And it's not that easy, because you can have different definitions of these things for different purposes. And that's so critical, because you can't be spending all your time trying to manually pull that together just before the board meeting, even though a lot of, finance organizations end up doing that, because finance is in the end, the one source of truth, but you want it to be implemented in a systematic way. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kaitlin, who actually knows how to do that.
So it's almost like PTSD with board reporting is, it's really stressful. It's really stressful to prepare these slides, and but you can get it done. You get it done every time, right? Like, you make it happen. So it's a lot of meetings. It's clearing schedules. Ruslan, who I worked with before, he's actually on this call right now. We were chatting before this and just talking about, reminiscing about creating board slides. And it's, you got to clear your calendar. Is what you come up with on your version 1 is not going to be what is handed to the board. So it's a lot of meetings. So I've always reported into the head of sales. It's a lot of meetings with the CRO, the COO, and, reviewing. It's like you get your baseline metrics done, the metrics you've always reported, or updating the metrics from the prior board slides, and just reviewing them. And then they are telling you what the rest of the company is also doing, right? So I typically have insight into the marketing piece and the sales piece. So, because obviously our stories are tightly aligned, but there's HR and there's finance and there's product and these other teams that are also going to be presenting. So I'm used to working closely with the CRO or the COO with my team, saying, okay, what's going on at a high level. Help us understand what is being told, so that, yes, we have these metrics that we always present that we're updating, but what else is the story about, so that we can go help support that, or provide more information, or at least so we're all aligned on the same corporate messaging that is going to be going out. So, it's a lot of digging into data. It's a lot of, running reports. I mean, it's long hours in that week, but typically it's a week before, right? Because board meetings are happening after a quarter close. So you're getting all your books closed, and then you have to put together these slides pretty shortly after. So it's really just a lot of time together as a team, and a lot of time with your leadership team to figure out what is that story you're telling, and then any changes, any requests the board has made, because sometimes we'll get requests from them on things that they want to see, like I mentioned before. And what we also try to do leading up to that is, we have meetings, company meetings and team meetings. Like I'm used to a team, the sales team gets together quarterly to go over, do like an all hands of how we prepare for the upcoming quarter. And within that, you find metrics, right, that you're presenting to your company throughout the year. And we make sure we bookmark things that are really interesting, like things that we find like, ooh, this will be good for the board meeting. We should at least bookmark this, build a Tableau dashboard or a Cleary dashboard so that we can easily automate this and keep an eye on it as we go. So that when we get to that board slide, we kind of have this running list of things that we have found interesting that might, depending on what that story is, might support. So, I mean, we try to replicate everything. There's always the one-off ad hoc reporting out of Excel that you're going to do, right? Like it's going to happen. But once we've done them, is trying to get them into Salesforce or Cleary or, InsightScore, or whatever BI tool or data visualization tool that you have, so that you can manage it going forward to make it easier on you. Or sometimes it's just creating a really great Excel model that you just can dump your data into, and it will just update for you. You're going to have those late nights, and you're going to have the scrambling, and the day before the CRO coming to you and be like, hey, we need to tweak this. And it's like, as an analyst in the back of your head that it's not a tweak. That's going to take a couple hours of work to do that. But you just got to clear your schedule and just be ready for it. Because at the end, it's actually really gratifying to see the output of work that you're providing to the company.
Yeah. Oh, it's so interesting. Through hosting RevOps roundtables here at OpFocus, I hear pretty much every month over month, and I'm aware of who has board meetings coming up to prep, because that blocking off that time is so critically important. And I'd say very, very few heads of revenue operations can go into the board prep process calmly. That there is just a lot of time that has to be blocked off, and conversations that have to be had. And I imagine in companies that are scaling, bringing on new executives into the fold, that there's a continuous education that has to occur around, okay, you might have done CAC this way in the past, or you might have calculated retention this way. This is how we're doing it, and you may share why. Kind of like what Lauren shared before, just sort of like laying down the law. But I can imagine confusion as an organization just keeps growing and adds more senior folks on if the metrics aren't really clearly identified. As part of that as well.
That is, and it's also your definitions at a company, like when you're presenting to your company at an all hands, the definitions of those metrics could be different than how you present them to the board. So making sure that you have a dictionary, like a metrics dictionary, that kind of has the different iterations of it, it's really important. And then exactly what you said, when someone comes on board, helping them understand how you do things at your current company, it's less confusing. So
yeah, great. All right, thank you both.